Well, good evening and welcome to everybody. My name is Cindy Caskell and beside me is Krista. And we are very excited that you are with us today. The self-determination group was established in 2014 by Carissa and her friend Jamie. Both are on the call tonight. And so when Carissa and Jamie asked us about starting a group as a mom, I wanted to know what was their purpose? What did they want to do? And Carissa, what did you say? You remember? You wanted to give people what?
A voice.
A voice. You wanted to give people a voice, right?
Yeah.
And did you also talked about telling what? You wanted people to hear your what?
Story.
Yeah, your stories. Right. So Chris has been advocating for herself and others since she was young. She started advocating in 3rd grade and has been doing it since. And so she wanted a group that gave people with disabilities a voice, let them know they had a voice, help them determine how to use their voice, and then also to advance the disability rights movement. Because when you tell your story, it is impactful in changing legislation. So the purpose of the group is to amplify the voices of people with disabilities to live a self-determined life as they define it. We serve to educate and advocate for policy that supports self-determination, and we take actions against any policy that removes that right. So that's a little bit about who we are. And then we are affiliated with Texas Advocates. We are a chapter of that organization, and Texas Advocates is a statewide organization for individuals with disabilities. We're also affiliated with the ARC of DFW area. We are not a program of theirs. We have our own bylaws, our own operating procedures, and our own budget, but they are very gracious to support us with marketing purposes, with monitoring and actually balancing our books. And so part of their mission is self-determination. And so it was a natural fit for us. The way you can stay connected with us is listed here. We have an active email account. It's the sdg@thearcofdfw.org. We also have an active Facebook account, which is the very best way to keep up with what we're doing. We post action alerts, informational articles. We have our videos, any upcoming events, etc. It's a very busy page. It's the legislative session, so it's a really busier page than usual. So anytime you have to work the legislative session, it's fast and furious and a lot of information in a short amount of time. So anyhow, tonight we are going to be talking about consumer-directed services. Hold on just a second. And I'm trying to get to where I can let Norine share her screen. So give me a second and let her introduce. Consumer-directed services, in short, is a way for people to direct the services that they pay for. And so we will be talking about those under a Medicaid waiver option, and how also that consumer-directed services supports self-determination. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. And again, thank you all for being here. Norine, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindy and Carissa, for this wonderful invitation to talk about consumer-directed services and how self-advocates who are from the Gulf Coast area are using consumer-directed services to actually be able to have a self-determined life. And so when we got this invitation, which is pretty amazing, because we don't often get asked to talk about this kind of service and in the Medicaid waiver. So we're really excited to share this information and to share this opportunity. Consumer-directed services in Texas is offered through all the Medicaid waivers. And so what I thought I would start with is just to kind of give you a real quick overview of some of the topic areas under consumer-directed services. But then we're going to shift and go into self-determination and how the CDS and self-determination kind of matches up. and how the self-advocates will be on our panel will be sharing their stories. And then we'll come back to these topics if you guys have any questions. But before we get started into the heavy stuff, the heavy lifting, let me introduce our amazing group that we have with us. And I'd like to start by this wonderful, handsome young man on my right side, Edward Jalloway. Edward is my youngest brother. He lives here in Seabrook, Texas with my husband and myself and our 97-year-old mom, Lucy. And so Ed also uses consumer-directed services, so he'll be sharing some of his story, right, Ed?
Yes.
Yeah. And then with us also on our panel is Mr. Ricky Broussard. Give us a high five, Ricky.
Hello.
Many of you may already know Ricky. Ricky has served, he's a staff person for Imagine Enterprises as a peer support a mentor, and he also has served on many statewide committees as well as Texas Advocates, and so you may be familiar with him. But he's been preaching the self-determination story for close to 10 years, as he and I got to know each other under a self-determination grant, and I guess it started in 2005 or something like that. So Ricky and I have been hanging out together for a long time.
Yeah, Ricky.
And then also on our panel for tonight, and I'm going to ask them to wave, is Gwen and Andy. Gwen and Andy Noser. There they are. And they will also be sharing their stories. And with them is Melissa McNeil, who's supporting Gwen and Andy at their home. Okay. So super. That's our panel. Y'all can put questions in the chat box. We'll try to get to them. So, but that's a good way to remember that those questions are there. As we're going through things, but we also want to make this relaxed enough to where if I see somebody raise their hand, we're going to recognize you and have you answer things. So let's get started now with consumer directed services. And
hey, Norine, I'm here too if you want to ask me some questions about it too.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Consuelo. You bet. Yes, I'm sure there's many things that you can add, and I know that we also have some other self-advocates that might be able to add their perspective on consumer-directed services and how it works for them. Super. Thank you. So one of the main things I wanted to make sure that people understand is that consumer-directed services under the Medicaid waiver is something that the individual must select. Okay, there's this whole process, and sometimes if you don't know it's there and that you can select it, then you don't do that. And so it is not always something that is offered to you. And many times when especially depending upon where you're coming from, if you've not been a member of a group, if you haven't heard about it, that you may not even know about it. So your service coordinators and case managers should be sharing information, but it's not always information that you know about. And sometimes you need to ask about it. You need to ask, do you offer consumer directed services, or can that be done under this Medicaid waiver? I will also share that if you are not under a Medicaid waiver, if you don't receive one currently, but you are connected to a managed care organization and get what's called Community First Choice, Community First Choice can also offer services that are consumer directed. So that's a totally different ball game. It's not the traditional Medicaid waivers, but you can get consumer directed services under Community First Choice. And again, there's a whole lot of other stuff behind that, but that's just a basic thing to know is that you asking for it is important. What consumer directed service does is it allows the person and or their designated representative, meaning that if you are a person that needs help and you know how to ask for help, which is one of the things we always talk about, right, Ed?
Yeah.
Ask for help when you need it. Is that you can assign a person, a designated representative, to help you with specific things in consumer directed services. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. They are not a legal guardian. They don't have to be a representative payee or anything like that, but it is something under CDS to get help when you need it. The other big thing is that a lot of people get really scared about consumer directed services because under the policy, the Health and Human Services policy on their website, everything else. They talk about you becoming an employer. Well, becoming an employer can be pretty scary because you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to pay payroll taxes. I got to do all, how do I do that? And it's a big responsibility, right, Ed? So we're going to talk about, there is an entity called the Financial Management Service Agency who takes over that responsibility. You assign that FMSA or Financial Management Service Agency those responsibilities that are kind of the scary part of being the employer. And so we can spend time chatting about that. That'll probably come up in the conversations that the self-advocates will share with us today. When you're using consumer-directed services, especially under the HCS and Texas Home Living waivers, your local authority will always be involved. Okay, they are just a part of that system. If you're using the other waivers, you're going to have a case manager or someone else through the Health and Human Services who is assigned to the case. And it's basically representing the state's kind of skin in the game. They're the ones that are over the budget. They're the ones that have to make sure things happen at the state level. So knowing that a local authority or a case manager has to be there to coordinate the services. In some cases, but not in all cases, a provider may also be involved. And a provider being more like our traditional providers. I know there was a young lady who's connected in an ICF group home or facility. And in this, I'm like, for instance, in Ed's case, and I'm going to share this about you, Ed, that Ed actually has a provider because of some of his medical needs and his dental needs. And so in order for us to meet the Health and Human Services rules, we have to have that provider involved. And then whenever Ed has that additional expense, I go to that provider and ask them for that expense to be covered. So we'll cover, those are some of the really, really basic things that I hear the most often when people ask about consumer-directed services. And like I said, when we get to the last slide, this one will come up again so that you can ask questions, but you'll probably ask a lot of the questions as we go through the stories. Okay?
Are you okay?
Yep. They're all, look, if you're okay, thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. Good. Great. So one of the things that Cindy and Carissa taught me, as well as Jamie, is that if you're going to talk about self-determination, make it easy to remember, right? So SCARF, support, confirmation, authority, responsibility, and freedom. Okay, that's a little bit different than how we learned it, right, Ricky?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to take, these are the 5 principles of self-determination. They are hugely important in our lives, in everyone's life. And so what we want to take is those ideas and how do we use it in consumer-directed services. So just in general, self-determination, that's control over your life decisions, including directing how you spend money. And when you think of the Medicaid waiver, let's face it, it's that budget. It's that money that you get to do what you want to do. And hopefully you'll get some control over those decisions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that was important to you, Ricky, and I sure know it was important to
Yeah,
Gwen and Andy. So we want to talk about how self-determination matches up with consumer-directed services. And the first area we'll talk about is support. And what are the supports that you receive? So supports are those, it could be a lot of different things. It could be people, it could be places, it could be things, but it's what the self-advocates, what you, Ricky, or Ed, or Gwen and Andy, what you need to be successful. So we'll first start with support, and we'll go with a story about how consumer-directed services allows you to get the support you need. Okay, and get the right kind of support. So Ricky, let's start off with your story. What kind of support is it that you need that you get through CDS?
Okay. Well, one of the for my support, I have 2 employees, and this gentleman that you see on here, his name is Robert, and what Mr. Robert does for me, he comes in my home and he helps me get dressed and helps me in my chair, and he also helps me. He takes me into the community, like to the grocery store, to the doctor, or or when or when it's time for me to travel for work. He even travels with me,
Right.
and then also we all when I'm not working and when I'm off, and we hang out together, and we he helps me with he supports me with a lot of the stuff I need help with. And then also another thing, Mr. Robert helps me with. He helps me with my emails, and he helps me to respond to my emails, and we uh, and when I want to go to a game or something, he'll support me, and take me to a baseball game, and we also, um like I said, I travel a lot, and I have my own van, so I don't drive, but that's my van that we're behind, and so Mr. Robert, he drives for me, and then another thing that Mr. Robert helps me with, he helps me pay my bills online, and then another thing Mr. Robert helps me with also too. He 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 helps me with pretty much with anything I need help with.
So obviously a very important person in your life, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But he's not the only person that supports you, that you pay for support.
Right.
You're consumer directed.
And also too, I have Mr. Ronald Collins. He also he Mr. Robert, he works with me Monday through Friday, and then my other employee I have, his name is Mr. Ronald. He works with me on Saturdays and Sundays, and he works 20 hours a week. And then also, um, besides Mr. Robert and Mr. Ronald, I have supportive employment, and I have Miss Ashley. She helps me with with my work, and she helps me with presentations, just like Miss Norine does also.
But you don't pay me.
No, no, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't.
Yeah. So that's a different kind of support. We'll talk about that too in a little bit. So
Yeah.
we all need support.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ricky. That's really cool. And when we talk about the history, you've had other staff who have
Yeah.
been involved with you. Yeah. Through the years. So you haven't always had the same staff, but you've had Robert for a long time.
Actually, actually, me and Mr. Robert, we've been together. This, if I'm thinking correctly, this would be probably our 13 years that we've been together.
And in
Coming.
general, one of the things that I have heard from our financial management service agency director, she reports that there tends to be very low turnover.
Yes.
Once people find the support that matches them and their family and what their situation is. So that's a pretty common thing to see is very low turnover. Super, Ricky, thanks. And so next up is Ed.
Hey, Noreen, this is Cindy.
Yes.
Can I just engage Ricky for just a second?
Sure.
Sure. So, Ricky, I don't know if you remember this conversation but I remember it vividly. When you first got services and I asked you, what was the most important thing to you in getting services and controlling them? Do you remember what you told me?
Yes, I do. One of the things that I always say when I do my presentations, I say I get to decide who touches my body and when I want them to.
Yes, yes. And that you wanted to drink your beer and watch football in your shorts.
Yeah, I can drink adult beverage, when I want, when I want it to.
Oh, I remember it because I don't remember how old you were at the time, but you said it's the first time I get to control who touches my body.
Yes.
And that was the most profound thing I have ever heard. And it has never left me. And I just want to thank you for taking the opportunity to share that with me. And I hope that it was okay that we shared it tonight.
No problem.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. So now you made Edward thirsty and he wants to go get a beer. His Bud Light in his refrigerator. So Ed, tell us, who's that guy in that picture right there? Who's that?
Wow.
Robert. And what does Robert do?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. Well, we made this short little video, and this is literally less than a minute long, but it's of Robert and Ed, right? And so I don't know if I have a way to slow it down because it goes really, really fast because of we were making it for a 1 minute show. Hello, my name is Norine Gill. This is.
Can you turn it up a little bit?
Yeah? Where'd you get that?
Oh God, my shirt. Ha!
HCF Medicaid Waiver 6 years ago. Supported employment in the Medicaid waiver allows us to hire Robert to provide services to Ed to keep his business operational. We use a consumer-directed services option so that we can hire staff to keep Ed at home and work and in the community.
Ed has his own business, so he has the finance side, the advertising side, and he participates in every aspect of this job with support.
Thank you.
Oh God.
Yeah, that was good, Ed. So that last little clip, let me see if I can stop this. What you doing? Yeah? Sorry about it. Okay. Ed's dress. Ed is 55 years old and received it. There you go. I wanted to just. You like this video, huh, Ed?
Yeah, muscle man.
Yeah, muscle man. So that's Robert, and Robert is his supported employment coach. And you like that, don't you? Right? So who's that person right there?
Trudy.
And Trudy is your sister, right? And Trudy lives in Austin, but she comes in occasionally to do respite services for us under the consumer directed services. So you can have family members as staff. They can't live in the same, we're under the HCS Medicaid waiver, so they cannot live in the same house as us, but we can hire staff, family members to do work. And we at both as personal support or respite or whatever it is that you're trying to fulfill in the plan. So who is that lady back there?
Amy.
That's Amy. And Amy comes and works with you how many days a week?
2 weeks.
3 days a week.
3 days.
Okay. And who's that dude right back there?
Well, Matt.
That's Matt. And what does Matt do with you?
Frisbee play golf.
Yeah, he played Frisbee golf. And then what else do you do together? You go to the gym. Right. And as well as a lot of other things, but a lot of the personal care. And Matt is also does a lot of the backup activities for Ed's business, and that he does a shredding business, as you saw, but he also goes to market once a month and sells products and goods. So Ed enjoys that part of his life a great deal, and it's pretty important to him. But to be active and in the community, wouldn't you say?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you like to travel, don't you? Sort of like Ricky. So that's probably why you get along so well. So that was that getting the right kind of support for Ed is probably been amazing. Like just like Ricky, we have been through quite a few different staff through the years, but we just, I mean, you know, things happen, but for in general, we've had a very, very stable group of staff working with us for quite some time. And we feel very fortunate because during this year of COVID, you've been just as active as ever, right? As usual. So, and been very, very safe, no illnesses, and all the staff went ahead and got vaccinated. But a couple of them quit other jobs and they stayed with Ed. One of the things that I feel very fortunate to be able to do under consumer directed services is pay a better wage than many other places will pay. So, so that people really appreciate having the job and working. So anything else you want to add to that, Ed?
That's it.
That's it. Okay, that's pretty good. You got a pretty good group.
Hello, my name is.
Oops, sorry. Oh, you probably don't want to hear that again. So, and then we have Gwen and Andy. Okay, and Melissa, are you there? You got unmuted. So tell us about your supports. What are the kinds of supports that you get through consumer directed services that help you achieve self-determination?
Okay.
Melissa.
I have Melissa Fanelli, and then we have Nora. I don't know his last name very well, but
Y'all participate in hiring them.
but the
He takes us to the grocery store.
he takes us to the grocery store. Melissa takes us to the grocery store.
How many staff have y'all been through? A lot of staff.
We've had more than one thing of staff, and Melissa over here just chatted through the machine how many set of people we've had.
Yeah.
I think
So can I ask you a question, please? Gwen and Andy, you're living in your own home, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
yes, we are.
All right. That's a home that you own, correct?
Yes. And we've been married 24
24 years was Saturday.
All right. Lovely. So if you didn't, the staff that come to support you, right? Do they help you keep your house together and your medications? What kinds of things do they help you with when they're there?
And Nora helps us fill up the medications, make sure we can do the dishes.
Right.
And the clothes.
Yeah, and then sometimes we go for a walk once in a while because it was either raining or whatever, and it was whatever we were doing.
Yeah,
sometimes
I'm sure that there are probably lots of things that you do. Yeah. So do y'all have a meeting with the Gulf Coast Center still? Do they do their meetings once a year with you?
Plan.
Yeah.
They're calling you. They're calling LaShonda.
Yeah, LaShonda calls us.
Oh,
LaShonda calls.
okay. So but the main support that you get are from the staff that you hire through your waiver, your consumer directed.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, perfect. Well, was there anything else you wanted to share about your support?
My mother checks on me, and dad My father checks on me, see how things are.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think that that's so important that when we talk about support, that we don't just talk about paid support, but we also talk about all the people in our families and our friends and our neighbors, people who are good in our circle of support. So super. Thank you
Yeah.
guys. Appreciate it. Melissa, did I miss anything?
No.
No.
Okay, awesome. Oh, there we go. I even had a picture of Ricky's circle of support. This is only a portion of his circle of support, but we always talk about that and how important it is in self-determination. And some people are paid. They're paid through the Medicaid waiver. You see Robert and there's Ronald. And then a lot of us are there because we are either co-workers or we're friends. And there's Ashley, there's Cheryl. Yeah.
And see, Cheryl and Norine and Sandy Smith, we're actually all co-workers, but they're also in my circle, and they're non-paid, and so, but like Miss Noreen said, I have Mr. Ronald and I have Robert and I have Ashley. Those three, they work for me. I'm their supervisor, and um and my Aunt Bryn, she does not get paid either. She
that Brent up there.
yeah, and she comes over, and she visits me, and we hang out, and I like when she comes over because she cooks, and like I always say, everybody knows the leftovers, they taste good the next day. So, I like that.
Yeah. So I think that someone mentioned earlier that they had been on CDS and then they've changed for various reasons. But the important part here is finding people you can trust. And that's important in everything we do in life, is that you want to be with people you can trust. The next a principle of self-determination is confirmation. So we're at the C in SCARF, right? So confirmation is that when we have self-advocates like Ed, when he decides to make a decision in his own life and giving input into how we do things in the future, I think the better we get at self-determination, the more people will be able to experience it. And so how do we help people make decisions? So Ricky, you're one of the things you like, and this is 100% Ricky Broussard, is expressing yourself and being heard.
I love to I love to talk, and like I said, I do a lot of teaching, and another thing that I do a lot is before COVID, I used to go to Austin a lot, and I talk to the legislators, and I make sure when I go there that we're always at the table, because when they're making big decisions on whatever, we need to make sure that we're at the table, and that we're being listened to, and make sure that they're also that we're being respected also.
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry. And I was just thinking that before you had consumer directed services, when you lived in the ICF,
yeah,
to be able to do those things was pretty much impossible.
I'm talking to people, do I only talking here?
Edward likes to talk to all of them too.
Right. Yes, that's true. Before I had the opportunity to do consumer directed services, I used to live in a group home, in a 6-bed group home, with 3 women and 3 men, and we but before I moved to that group home, there were 3 things that I asked for. One, could I have my own phone in my room, and I did for a while, and then 2, what I asked for before I finally made the decision, I asked could we could I have cable, because actually before I lived in this group home, none of the group homes they had cable until I started, advocating for everybody to have cable, in the group homes, and now all the group homes and down here in this area, they have cable, because I advocated for myself, and not just for myself. I advocated for my roommates, for them to have cable also.
Yeah, I guess part of what I was trying to share was that consumer directed services allowed you the flexibility in your schedule that's
True.
not dependent on the group home schedule. And
True.
so that's why you're able to go and express your, do the things you're doing.
That's
But thanks. You're absolutely correct.
Oh,
That's the right
me.
thing. And who is that guy?
Edward.
There's Edward. And Edward likes to express himself and be heard too, right?
Yeah.
He could hardly stand it, Ricky, that you were talking and he wasn't.
Sorry. Sorry, Ed.
And this is Ricky. This is Ed when he was practicing for his trip to the Capitol, where he was going to talk about consumer directed services, right? You going to stand up and show the sign? It says, I have the money to hire my staff.
I get money in my job.
And to come into my home, and I sign their timesheets. And we're going to show a timesheet in a little bit. And there's his t-shirt. He's showing off his t-shirt, right? And that's a really important part of your life, right, Ed, is working. Yeah. And showing off his muscles. So, okay. Oh, boy. So then Gwen and Andy talking about confirmation. What would Melissa and you guys, you got to unmute. There you go.
Mhm.
Well, how would you confirm your voice in making decisions about yourself?
Well, confirmation. I'm not so sure how to do that.
Y'all signed your time sheets?
We signed our time sheets.
We signed the time sheets, and then give them back, and then give them back to my mother.
Oh, okay. Well, I will tell you, one of the areas that I think is that y'all have actually shown how the confirmation of your own ideas and what it is that you wanted is when you decided that you wanted to live in Pearland, right? That there were people that were not all that excited about you living in Pearland. They wanted you to live somewhere else in a different house, I think, or something. And that you guys made sure that in the decision making that you were able to live where you wanted to live.
They wanted us to live in Alvin at one time.
Right. And
we
you
didn't want to live in Alvin. We wanted to have a house in Pearland.
Right. So that's a pretty important part of what your decisions were. And what consumer directed services does is allow you a lot of flexibility around those decisions. The traditional Medicaid, and so even the Medicaid waivers don't always give you that flexibility. Ricky, I think you've experienced similarly when you needed to move.
Yeah, Ricky.
From one apartment to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Edward also has a choice about where he wants to live.
Yeah, Ricky.
That's more than just
Wow.
he wants to know where Robert is.
We all had that decision to do.
Right.
Where you wanted to live?
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. So those confirmation is huge. And I do, I think one of the other stories, Ricky, that you've talked about is that when you have served on a lot of the state committees you served on, is feeling like a token, that
Yes.
your voice isn't being heard. And, but learning how to make decisions, being a part of that process every day, I don't think anybody can call you a token.
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Yeah.
And I always say, well, in most of my presentations that I do, nothing about me without me. And me and Norine, we always do. We either do presentations together or we do presentations separate. But I do give Noreen permission to talk about me, because sometimes we're not together and sometimes we are, and vice versa. When um when I'm doing a presentation, Noreen gives me permission to, say what I need to say about her. So it's all about all about being listened to, and also all about being respected too.
Awesome. So the next principle in self-determination is actually authority. And that's the power or right to make those decisions and that they're respected and followed. At this little design that is drawn up, that was actually something that Ricky came up with, right, Ricky?
Yes.
You kept working on it till you got what you wanted it in terms of authority. And so for you, Ricky, you said taking control over your own life was, and it was important to you.
Yeah, because I lived in 4 other facilities, and I actually when my name came up, is for me to have consumer director services, I was happy when it came up, because I can control who comes in my home, and if I want to have company, yes, I'll have company. But if I don't, no, I won't let you in.
Right. So yeah, your place is your castle. Your
Yes.
home is your castle. So oops, I think I got some of my slides mixed up. So we might get some authority slides in the middle of all that.
Okay.
Responsibility is one of the next principles of self-determination. So let's see. Hopefully this won't go too far off track. Responsibility is those activities or tasks that we're required to do. It's a part of a job or a legal obligation. And I think y'all mentioned several of those responsibilities already. But Ricky, you talk a little bit about using resources wisely. And I'm not sure if tell us a little bit more about that.
And what I mean what I mean by using my resources wisely, I have the responsibility to make sure I pay my rent, so I can make sure I have a roof over my head, and then also I have the responsibility to make sure I pay my bills on time, and then I also have a responsibility for for my staff. So when I have to travel somewhere, I have to let my staff know, so they can make sure, so I can make sure that I may have to leave on a Friday, and I probably won't be back until that Saturday. So I may have to ask Mr. Ronald to work a Friday night. So a Thursday night. So Robert can have some time off and be ready. And then my other responsibility is, so I can make sure that my staff get their timesheets in. I go each person's timesheet. I sign it and then I send it off, because that's a big responsibility too. That that I have to keep up with.
Yeah, I think it's a big responsibility for everyone. Gwen and Andy already mentioned it. Whose name is that right there, Ed?
However,
Yeah. And that's Robert's timesheet.
it does.
Yeah. So Edward's also takes responsibility. Every staff person, every timesheet is signed by Ed. Of course, he has a little bit of help with somebody reviewing it and making sure it's accurate. You can see all the little check marks on the side. This is for the FMS, for the Financial Management Service Agency that we use. We turn in both the paper timesheet, and they also now do electronic visit verification, which is required by the state. The reason why they do both under the HCS and Texas Home Living Waiver is to make sure that what is done electronically is accurate. And if the information is lost electronically, you have a backup on the paper. It's a new.
Too.
It is, and they it's a lot of work, isn't it, Ed?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he has to sign his name a lot.
I'm there.
So, but the electronic visit verification and the paper timesheet, which is now under all the Medicaid waivers, because it was required by federal law, is that when things get, the reason why the paper timesheet is still there is that in case the information gets lost electronically, that you have this backup. But this is what
back out, Ricky.
Yeah.
When they say you call it off.
Yeah. So and we actually we call Cheryl, right?
Yeah, Cheryl too.
We call Cheryl when we have a question about timesheets or the app that we're using for our staff.
The staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a pretty important process, and this is critical for all of the consumer directed services, because it is what drives the payroll for your direct support staff, as well as the payment for things such as, I mean, some people do use rehabilitation services, or if you're doing dental or any of the other services, a supported employment service, all of those processes need to be there in order for that timesheet or that invoice to be paid. And that then is paid for through the Financial Management Service Agency. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Ricky, you do the same thing when you use your therapy, right? You have a therapist that you use, and she does all of her invoicing.
Mm-hmm.
So, so Gwen and Andy, tell us a little bit about the responsibilities that you take at home and the things that you do.
Norine?
Yes?
Before we do that, we had somebody who has asked to ask a question of Ricky or Ed. Can we let them ask real quick before we move on?
Sure.
Good. Sure.
Hi, thank you. My name is Rhonda Colgrove. I had the question. And it goes back to the timesheets. I have a daughter who will be utilizing services, and I'm sorry for me to get choked up, but I can't tell you how excited I am to hear how successful you are all being. It gives me hope for what she's going to, when she gets to this age. But how do you verify, what is it that you guys do to verify the timesheets and things? What are your personal checks and balances? I know some businesses use timesheets, some use an honor system, some use that. And the reason I'm asking, before my daughter turned 18, she was working at a job and they had her sign blank timesheets. And then filled it out after, which we went over that. First of all, she was under 18, so they couldn't do that anyway, and just those things. So what processes have you guys put in place to help protect yourself from those kinds of things? Because not everybody's necessarily nice and honest.
Yeah. Great question. So Ricky, you want me to take that one?
Yes, you can take it.
Yeah. Okay, so for now, and this has just been really recent, it started in January of this year, staff who work for Edward have to use a device to electronically sign in when they are there located at the place where they start work, to sign in and to sign out. So the interesting thing about that is that the device actually shows their location. So I recently had a staff person start his shift at a different location with Ed. I was with Ed in a different spot. So the GPS saw that it was at a different spot and it didn't allow it to be paid until I went in and verified it. Edward isn't able to do obviously electronic verification. He does go into the paper timesheets as he signs. And then you'll see on the little check marks next to the times on this timesheet, that's me double checking that what came up on the EVV also is recorded correctly on the paper timesheet.
Right, so that back to the advocate that you talked about earlier, that they can have an advocate that can help them with their.
Correct, that designated representative, and basically that person can do those double checking on the timesheets. Or the other process is that for most of the individuals who are self-advocates, and Consuelo might actually be helpful in this question, is that a lot of the self-advocates have asked the Financial Management Service Agency to do the checking of the timesheet with the electronic visit verification. And if there's any conflicts, to resolve the conflict. But Consuelo, you have to shut your music off though before you can unmute. There you go. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And so on your timesheet, do you get any help with the staff and their payroll? Consuelo, stop walking around for a second. Stay still.
Well, I'm going to the garage because I have family over here celebrating my brother's birthday.
All right.
I do, but I have Haley.
Okay, you have the designated representative. Okay, very good.
And sometimes I would do it myself.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So that's using that different process then. Okay. Super. Yeah. All right. Did that?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So yeah, this is a big part of it, and knowing the schedule, and I guess the other part that was really important for a lot of self-advocates, right, Ricky, is setting up that schedule. Yes. And I remember you talking a whole lot about having something that was very reliable and routine for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it has been for Ed. Yeah. Okay. So then the other part of the self-determination principles that fit in with consumer-directed services is authority. And Ricky, part of what you talk about when you talk, and I think you already mentioned this, is the authority to decide who comes over, right?
Yeah, and I always ask my friends or family, whoever it is, I ask them to please call me before they come over, because I may be at work, or I may be somewhere. Or if I want company, yes, you can come over. But if I don't want company, no, I'm gonna tell you cannot come over. And that's one of the other things that's important to me too. Is I could I could have somebody come over and spend the night if I wanted to. But if I don't want company, no, you're not coming over.
So, and that's not always possible when you're living in a facility or another place, is having that. So consumer directed services gave you the opportunity to set up your own household and your own apartment, and have that wonderful feeling of having guests coming over. Mm-hmm. Edward had got a little sore on, and so he decided to go take a little break. And so this is one of the things that Edward loves having authority over, and that's having authority over the money that he earns. He's actually cashing a well-earned check at the bank, or depositing it into his business account, actually. And so that authority over having that money in his own bank account, and knowing the people at the bank, and knowing that bank account is for his business, is a big piece for him, and incredibly important. His goal is to earn enough money in his business account to purchase a golf cart. because that'll be a part of his business then. And so he's slowly but surely getting there. So that's pretty exciting stuff.
Likes playing golf.
Oh yeah, and he does love playing golf. All right, so Andy and Gwen, authority. What kinds of authority do you have in your household? What kinds of decisions do you make that you're able to do because you're doing consumer-directed services?
We pay our own bills.
Yeah.
Andy works at HEB, and I'm
Retired.
I'm retired, and I'm here at the house. I help clean a little bit, and then I've got the animals to take care of.
Well, yeah, and that's a lot of responsibility. That belonged in that responsibility slide, is taking care of all the things at the house and taking care of the animals. But you do have authority over your own funds. You have your own Social Security checks that you receive, and
Yes.
keeping up with all of those, as Andy, as you said earlier, and also in your job, right, Andy?
Yes.
Okay, and bringing home the paycheck and stuff. So that authority over the money and how that money is spent is extremely important. And I've seen you guys do many decisions in relationship to money, but you also are the best savers. You're the best budgeters I've ever met. If I ever need to teach someone how to budget, I'm going to ask them to talk to you guys.
Well, we
Well,
don't.
that's if you get stimulus checks, like we just got a stimulus check like last week.
You got a stimulus check. All right. Yes. So did my brother Ed. And guess what? He's gonna use it to help him buy a golf cart. All right. So then the next principle is actually the principle of freedom. And this is the one that I love to talk about the most. So we're gonna see if we can't keep it to a minimum there. Freedom is the power to right to act, speak, or think as you want, and without hindrance or restraint. So Ricky, lead us out, man. What's freedom?
And what freedom means to me is that I have the freedom to live the life I'm living right now, because I have, like I said earlier, I have my own van, and actually this van that I have is it's all paid up, and I'm working on going to get a new one, and I have the freedom to to travel for work, and to hang out with my family and friends and coworkers when I have some free time, and
Absolutely.
and they can I can go anywhere where I want to go, and I don't have to be in a hurry to get back home.
Yeah, and the issues are, and the limitations are very typical, as that any person would be experiencing in terms of their freedom. And that's a real different lifestyle than when you lived previously in the ICFMR group home or the facilities that you lived in.
Yes.
So there you go. I'm sorry, I should have clicked on that picture when you were talking about hanging out with your families and friends and being there and being able to do the work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So for Ed, if he was here, he'd be going Colorado. And so one of his big, I think Andy already mentioned that Ed's a real golfer. He loves to go out and play golf. But the other, he likes to travel, and one of his favorite places to go is to Colorado. And he usually goes with one of his other sisters and one of his staff. And that's a trip that he plans once a year. He saves up for it. He knows he's saving up for it, and that's a wonderful thing for him that he looks forward to every year, and that he does. And so Gwen and Andy, freedom. What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom to me is being away from my parents, being able to live in my own house.
Oh, really?
Be married.
We're married, and mom wanted me to stay with 24 years ago. She wanted me to stay in the house with her, and I tried to tell her no. And my first brother had to talk to her and say, let her loose. She can handle it. This was my brother Stanley. Oh, gee whiz. I don't see why my brother had to get in on that one.
Well, you know how family is, right? We just kind of get where we think we belong. Look at Carissa shaking her head up and down. Yep, yep. Yeah. Well, thank you, Gwen. So, Andy, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know what? One of the things I thought you guys were going to share with us, because I know it's hugely important in your life, is your religion, and that your dedication to your religion and how important that is to you, and part of what you feel about freedom. Is that?
Well, yes.
Yes, we do enjoy our
Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints.
going to church.
Yeah, but we don't go to church that much because we can't
Find a ride.
Yeah, the COVID stuff has also gotten in the way. So I know that that's kind of a little bit of a mess, but I know that that's in the past. You've shared that as a very, very important part of how you feel about freedom, and that's something that not everyone is able to experience. And so I always appreciate you sharing that. Melissa McNeil, did we miss anything? Is there any other?
No, I'm in here.
Yeah, we're doing okay. All right.
Yes.
Well, super, because I see that we are 10 minutes out or so of wrapping up. This is something that Ricky mentioned earlier, and it's nothing about me without me. That's a really important part of Ricky's life in terms of how he feels about what consumer-directed services has been able to do, is that he has control over his decisions in his life, as does Ed and Gwen and Andy, that the system can't really force them to do something without asking them and getting their input into that decision. And many times when you're in another way of service delivery, that there's going to be other people making decisions, and then you are just migrated into that decision as a result of how the process is, as a result of how that service is set up. And of course, I'm talking about, things like, the facilities try very, very hard, I think, to try to make things person-centered, but it's just harder. It's harder because of the structure and how staffing is, and a variety of other issues that come to play to that. And one of those is when we're talking about people, even, and that people find themselves, and I talked about, and they're not a part of it. They're excluded from the conversation about themselves. And so I think, Ricky, you have pointed out that that's something that we need to change, that we need to always include the person in the conversations about them, whether you've got a staff meeting, or if it's just making a decision about what you're going to wear, right?
Right.
Did you have anything to add to that before we move on?
And thank you. And remember, you can ask for help, and listen to the good and the bad, and then after you hear both sides, then you're the person that's gonna make make the final decision, even if it's a bad decision, but because you're gonna have consequences, and then if you made a bad decision, uh, I'll have to live with it because I made that decision. But you have to have people in your circle that you know and trust that can help you make that decision. But remember, you have to make. You're the person that's making that final decision.
Thank you, Ricky. And Gwen and Andy, did you have anything you wanted to say about that? Nothing about me without me?
That's true. If somebody wants to talk about us, they need to ask us first.
That is true. They need to ask us first if they want to talk about it without us. We need to know. We need to know.
Yeah. Include you in the conversation and you're a part of that decision maker. And I think that the way that consumer directed services is structured is something that allows us to do that and really be able to implement it. I think that that what we're finding more and more as we invite self-advocates to use consumer directed services is that they are quite capable of making decisions, and that we recognize the support that they need in order to learn how to do that and to go through the process. All right, so
can I interrupt about that for me? About me?
Consuelo, sure.
With me, I like it because you know I can choose my own people to work with for me. Because like right now, I had to hire my brother, my youngest one, and my sister does it too. Is because right now with COVID, I had to live because I live with my dad, and my dad lived, you know, with his age, I had to be careful who comes in my house.
Right. And that's something that all of us, no matter what our age is we have to be careful with.
Well, yeah, because I had to keep it in the family bubble.
Right. Yeah.
And right now, my brother, he's my support system too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, so again, you using a structure that allows you to include people who you know and you trust to give you the supports that you need. Yeah. Awesome. I wanted to kind of give us a chance to ask. Cindy actually asked me that I give a chance for everybody to ask questions at the end. But I wanted to bring up this list again because I think these again are important issues that people bring up. I especially appreciate the question about the timesheets, as that is like critical to the process of consumer directed services. And if there are any questions then in regards to any of these points or to any of our panelists in terms of how they organize their lives, then that would be awesome. So Cindy, do you have anything you want us to address?
Yeah, so we've had some questions, and so I just want to say thank you for everybody who's typed into to the chat. First and foremost, before we go further, I and other people have wanted to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your personal stories. Thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight, and just thank you. We've had people acknowledge how engaged people have been, and that this session has been very, very, helpful in understanding things. So nobody's out there kind of, bored to tears. So yay, that's good. We always want to be engaging.
The heat's off.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Someone says here that they wanted to thank Ricky for sharing information about having a van. They had never thought about that for their own child. So thank you. We had someone that said, thank you to myself and Ricky for bringing up the point about being able to control who touches your body. I think that is the most profound thing. And truly, Ricky, it was life-changing for me. So thank you. We had somebody just say thank you. They can't wait to watch it on YouTube. They had to leave early. Rhonda asked her question. We have a question that asks, why does HCS require paper timesheets and EVV, but class does not for CDS clients? Noreen, can I refer that to you?
Yeah. And my understanding is that when they, that paper timesheet process in HCS, because of the way that the services are offered under consumer directed services, it's that issue of the verification, that there was, and that the way that they do pass have versus respite versus supported employment, that because and the other big issue was transportation. The HCS has broken out so many of its service definitions that and ways that the visit verification tool doesn't pick up all the services. So you have to have a general in and out, and then you have to have all these other services broken out so that you can actually bill them the way the state intends them to be billed. So it's not because the FMSA wants to do it, it's because of how policy was written prior to them implementing the electronic visit verification. And the electronic visit verification does not cover all the services of HCS. If that makes sense, then you're a rocket scientist. you should go you should go work for NASA.
Okay.
But that's HHSC not solving all the problems before they did electronic visit verification.
Okay, we had another one that wanted to know, and so Ricky, I think that you're the one that this would apply to most, but it says, do you think that by using okay, let me start, hold on. And you know what, I promised to not record this part. Are y'all okay if I keep recording, or do I need to turn it off? Everybody's okay? Okay, let me know if you're not. Okay, so they want to know that, did living in a group home help you determine what you wanted, and would it have been better to go straight into a CDS situation? And so Ricky, the question, I hope that made sense to you.
Well, I think I got it. Let me see if I can handle it right. Well, I honestly, I've always wanted to live out on my own, but and Noreen, please correct me if I'm wrong, because all the all the other places, because the main reason that I went into ICF is, one, they had the van, with the lift on it, and that's I think that's the main reason that that I went into, because, like I said earlier, I lived in four different facilities, and I had to leave home at the age of 10, and I graduated from high school in 1986. So the group homes, they wasn't around in 86. So I had no other options, and until I actually got into the till I actually got into the group home, because when I got my slot, I got my slot in February of 2007, and actually when I got my slot, that's when myself and Noreen, I told everybody in my circle that that my name came up on the waiting list. In my very first apartment that I lived in was in Houston on Cullen, and that was my very first time living on my own in my very first apartment. In the apartment where I'm at right now, this is my second apartment, and of June of this year, on June 5th, I will be here. If I'm doing my math correctly, I will be here 8 years on my own. So did I answer the question, Miss Cindy?
Oh, you need to unmute yourself. Oh.
Something is going on with my computer.
She keeps going in and out.
No, she's muting and unmuting. You're still muted.
It's unmuted me. Okay, I mean,
There
it's
we go.
muted me. Okay, so the question in a yes and no, do you think that by living in a group home that it was helpful for you to decide what you want in life, or would you have rather just gone to CDS? And yes or no?
If they would have had CDS back then, yes, I would have rather go into CDS.
Okay, I thought I knew that answer, but I surely wouldn't want to ask it. Okay, so we have another one. What are the wages per hour? And Norine, I'm going to ask you to answer that one.
Yeah, the rate for HC, the rates are all different in all the different waivers. So class is very different. It's got a lower rate, but it's got a wider range of services. HCS has a higher rate for its direct support services. It goes up to 20, I think the rate is like $21 or $22 an hour in some cents. And so, you know, but you have to take taxes out of that, and you have to figure out how to, you know, your financial management service agency will say, this is how much the employer taxes, how much the individual taxes. So there's lots of things to balance in regards to that. But I mean, you know, individuals can be paid, you know, up to probably $19 an hour, maybe a little bit higher than that under HCS and Texas Home Living. If you're, you know, so but like I said, the waivers are all a little bit different, and there are differences not only in the rates, but there's also differences in the service definitions. So and how they're you got to do transportation separate, or I think even the supported employment rates are different under, like, for instance, class and HCS. That was quick and dirty.
Yeah, that's okay. And then we have another question. It says, and I'm going to ask this of Gwen and Andy, and also of Ricky, and then Norine, if you will speak for Ed. But let's start with Gwen and Andy. It says, what help did you receive in hiring the staff that you have today? Did you need help? And if you did need help, who helped you?
So Gwen and Andy.
Y'all are on mute, Andy.
Gwen's parents.
My parents helped. My parents helped.
Help us hire our staff.
My mother and father helped me with that.
Okay, very good. And so Gwen and Andy, let me ask, when they helped you, did they help you pick the person to hire you, or did they help you find the people to hire?
They help find us people who we want to hire, but we hired the persons ourselves.
They asked us to talk to them and see if we see if we would like them, because my mom was asking, because one of them was Melissa, that was here earlier, and she was working elsewhere before, but then mom asked her if she wanted to do this, And so she said yes, told Mama she would like to.
Great,
And
great.
she-
Thank you for
and she-
sharing. Thank you. Ricky, do you want to share how the help you received or if you needed help?
Well, mine was mine was a little bit different. I once my name came up on the waiting list, um, I uh, but because how I got to know Robert, he he used to travel with me, because before Robert worked for me, he used to be a carrier, and uh me myself and Robert's mom, we uh we worked at the Alligator Bank in Alvin, and his mom used to work on the same floor that I worked on, and so uh, I I, his mom knew that I needed somebody to take me on my trips, and so Robert used to work, for me whenever he could, but when the top uh, opportunity came, I, I I asked him would he want to work for me, and that's how I got Mr. Robert to work for me.
Very good. Well, thank you, Ricky. So where they had someone help them, this is someone you knew and you just asked them, would you want to work for me? Is that
Yes,
right? Okay,
yes.
very good. And then Noreen, you want to talk about Ed?
Sure. Because Ed lives in our household and stuff, it was really important that it would be a person that would fit within the household as a whole. And also the schedule. And so we have gone out and solicited for employees. We've used some of the websites like caretaker.com, Sitter City. We've looked at a lot of different individuals. We have interviewed a lot of people and that are from our local community. We've looked for people who have experience. Robert Kuykendall, who is the guy who's the supported employment, is actually a paraprofessional at the local school district. And we got to know him one summer when he was available to work with Ed. And he has since left the school district and is now supporting 3 individuals and has his own little business just doing consumer directed services. So there may be people like that in your community who are interested in doing that. And so we have had quite a few people, but we've always been very careful in our selection and very fortunate to have the team that we've had now for several years. So we feel, it's kind of a little bit different for everyone. And I know that that's been probably one of the biggest barriers people have mentioned to using consumer directed services is finding the right staff.
Right. Well, even though Carissa doesn't use consumer directed services in a very formal way, because we serve as a host home, that's been her choice.
Right.
We have helped her by putting ads out at local colleges, looked at, care.com, talked to friends, went back to school and found people we knew. And so what I typically do is Carissa has a list of the characteristics of people that she wants to consider. And so I will typically interview them first. And then based on that, kind of feel, do they have those characteristics? And then I submit, this group of people for her to make some decisions on. And so I think it's really important that people recognize, even though you don't have a formal consumer directed service option, there's still ways for people to direct their services. And I think it's important, Carissa has hired past teachers. She found a college student and fell in love with her. We found people on care.com. So anyway, yeah. So Teresa, I think you raised your hand.
we're not in consumer directed, as I explained earlier, but we're for 12 years and hope to go back. Hope this, anyway, but I've always done the interviewing for Mackenzie, but of course she's always present when we interview. Or what I do is the first time I may talk with them just because I talk with them on the phone and I get a feel for it. And if it feels right, then I'll bring them in to meet Mackenzie. And then depending on how Mackenzie reacts or how they react to Mackenzie, we make that decision together. And, you know, there were times it was very clear, you know, Mackenzie made it clear. Actually, before she did, the potential person made it clear there's no way. But Mackenzie showed me, don't even spend another minute talking to this person. But she knew before I did. I was trying to figure out how do I get out of this situation. So, you don't have to have language. Mackenzie doesn't to say go away. I mean,
That's beautiful.
If she had her device with that on it at that time, the one this is early in the day, she would have said that. But yeah, so that's what we did. And then when we moved to the DSA, we brought our people. I mean, when I interviewed the DSA, I said, look, I'm bringing my people. Will you hire them? And that, and said, and you're guaranteed you're going to keep them. You're not going to take them and move them somewhere, which my people, they wouldn't have gone. They came, they want to be with Mackenzie. So we lucked out. Yeah.
Great. Well, anybody else have any questions before we close for the night? No? Okay, well, I want to say thank you again, everybody who participated, to our speakers. I hope you've gathered a good information to go forward. Like I said, eventually you have to give me time and I have to have support myself to get this information on our on our YouTube channel. But we will post it on our Facebook as soon as it's available. So if you don't follow us on Facebook or you're not our friend on Facebook, we highly encourage it. It's the best way to get information about us and what we're doing. So thank you. Thank you. It was good to see everybody, and everybody have a wonderful evening. Norine, Ricky, excuse me, Gwen, Andy, and
Yes,
we said
yes.
thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes. Somebody asked for a link to Facebook. So I don't know the link, and I'm sorry. And I don't know how to maneuver my screen to give you that, but it's the Self-Determination Group. And if you can't find it, you can email me. It's Cindy, C-I-N-D-I, Paschal, P-A-S-C-H-A-L-L, at sbcglobal.net, and I will send it to you. All right. Thank you. Everybody take care.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You
Thank
too.
you.